the endless war. The war had lasted for 112 years. To the billions caught in its wake, it was all they had ever known. The Zalvanni Dominion and the Vorkari Empire had been locked in a brutal struggle for so long that no one remembered how it began. Only that neither side could afford to lose. Planets burned, civilizations crumbled, and the galaxy itself seemed on the verge of collapse. The Galactic Council had long since given up hope of a peaceful resolution. They had pleaded, negotiated, even threatened both sides, but war was the only language the Zalvanni and Vorkari understood. And so, the war raged on, a plea for help. It was not the first time the Galactic Council had approached Earth. Humans were a relatively young species on the galactic stage, having achieved space travel only a few centuries ago. Compared to the ancient empires that had ruled the stars for millennia, humanity was insignificant, or so the major powers believed. But the Council knew better. Humanity had remained neutral, watching from the sidelines as the war tore through the galaxy. Unlike other species, they had not chosen sides, had not traded military technology, had not sent troops to die for a war that was not theirs. Yet, the few glimpses the galaxy had seen of human capability were unsettling. Their technological advancements, their efficiency in warfare, and their ability to adapt had made them an enigma, one that both the Zalvanni and Vorkari preferred to ignore. Now, however, the Council was desperate. The war had no end in sight, and the galaxy itself was beginning to fracture under its weight. They needed an outside force, one with power, one that could break the stalemate. They needed humanity. A delegation was sent to Earth, high-ranking diplomats from dozens of neutral worlds. The meeting was held in Geneva, where human leaders, military commanders, and advisors gathered to hear the Council's plea. We cannot afford to lose another century to this war, the Council representative said. If it continues, the damage will be irreparable. Your people, your colonies, your trade networks, it is only a matter of time before you are affected. We need you to intervene. The human delegation listened in silence. When the Council was finished, Earth's response was simple and firm. This is not our war. The answer was final. A fatal mistake. The war continued. The Zalvanni and the Vorkari fought on, ignoring the Council's warnings. Casualties climbed into the trillions. Entire worlds became lifeless husks. But still, neither side could gain the advantage. Then, everything changed. It was a mistake, one that the Vorkari would not live to regret. Desperate to break the deadlock, a Vorkari fleet launched an unauthorized attack on the outskirts of human space. Their target, Epsilon Eridani III, a prosperous human colony. They had expected minimal resistance. A quick strike, a display of power, and a retreat before Earth could react. Instead, they committed a massacre. 17 million civilians were wiped out in the first orbital bombardment. Cities crumbled, the atmosphere burned, and the Vorkari fleet departed, believing the humans too weak to respond. They could not have been more wrong. Humanity's response. The attack on Epsilon Eridani III was broadcast across the Sol system within hours. The images were horrific, burning cities, shattered landscapes, and the last desperate messages of those who had perished. The response was instantaneous. Within minutes, every human military facility went on high alert. Fleets mobilized, planetary defenses activated, and warships that had never seen battle prepared for deployment. Humanity had remained neutral, not out of fear, but out of patience. They had chosen to stay out of the war because it had nothing to do with them. But now it was personal. A transmission was sent to both the Zalvanni and Vorkari leadership. It contained only 3 words. The war ends. The Council, upon hearing the message, asked how long Earth would need to prepare for war. The answer stunned them. We are already prepared. The beginning of the end. The Vorkari tried to justify their attack. They claimed it was a miscalculation, an unfortunate accident. They offered reparations, treaties, anything to prevent full-scale retaliation. But humanity did not negotiate with monsters. Earth's forces were already in motion, and in less than 12 hours, the greatest war in galactic history would come to an abrupt, and violent end. Not in years, not in months, not in weeks. In 5 hours, the sleeping giant awakens. The galaxy had never seen humanity in war. They had heard whispers, of course, old reports of minor skirmishes in deep space, of pirate fleets that vanished after targeting human trade routes. Some claimed the human soldiers fought with unnatural efficiency, that their technology was more advanced than they let on. But these were just rumors, and the great empires of the galaxy dismissed them as such. Even when humanity refused to join the war, the Zalvanni and Vorkari did not see it as an act of strength. They saw it as weakness. That illusion shattered the moment humanity declared war. Mobilization in minutes. Unlike the empires that relied on bureaucratic delays and political maneuvering, Earth's response was instant. Within minutes of the attack on Epsilon Eridani 3, a planetary emergency alert was broadcast across the entire Sol system. For other species, war was a slow, cumbersome process. It took weeks to call fleets to action, months to organize supply lines. Humanity, however, had spent centuries preparing for a war that never came. Now, they unleashed their full potential. Earth's Grand Armada, hidden from the galaxy, emerged from its deep space docks. Thousands of warships, from sleek destroyers to massive dreadnoughts, activated their AI battle systems and jumped to their designated coordinates. Orbital weapons platforms repositioned, aligning their planet-cracking railguns with enemy strongholds across the warfront. Cyber warfare divisions infiltrated the Zalvanni and Vorkari military networks, silently rewriting code, disabling communications, and planting false orders. Planetary garrisons, normally kept hidden, revealed their strength. Millions of heavily armored soldiers equipped with advanced exosuits and railgun weaponry, ready for deployment. While the galaxy scrambled to understand what was happening, humanity was already on the move. The enemy hesitates. The Vorkari High Command convened in an emergency session aboard their war station Vostal. "What do the humans want?" one general demanded. "Are they demanding reparations?" "No," an intelligence officer replied, his voice uneasy. "They have not responded to our offers. They have only given a single ultimatum: surrender or be annihilated." Silence. The Vorkari did not fear war. Their empire had fought for over a century against the Zalvanni, enduring devastating losses and still pressing forward. But this felt different. "Surely they do not expect us to surrender," another officer scoffed. "How long do their fleets need to prepare for engagement? A month? A few weeks?" The intelligence officer swallowed hard. "They have already launched their attack. Precision strikes." The first wave of humanity's assault did not come in the form of starships. It came in silence. The Vorkari and Zalvanni command networks, centuries old, layered with firewalls that had withstood decades of warfare, collapsed in an instant. Entire fleets lost access to their orders. Defensive stations powered down as their automated systems were overridden. Planetary governors found their communications jammed, unable to call for reinforcements. Then the orbital bombardments began. From light years away, human warships fired pinpoint strikes with weapons more advanced than anything the galaxy had seen. Kinetic rods, traveling at near-relativistic speeds, punched through capital ships and planetary defenses as if they were made of paper. Across dozens of battlefronts, entire Vorkari and Zalvanni command centers were reduced to smoldering ruins before their fleets could even react. And then humanity arrived. A different kind of warfare. The Zalvanni and Vorkari were accustomed to brutal, drawn-out battles. Grand engagements where warships clashed for days, armies clashed for weeks. Humans did not fight like that. Stealth ships infiltrated deep behind enemy lines, deploying surgical strike teams to eliminate key commanders. AI-controlled drones swarmed enemy fleets, targeting weak points with mechanical precision. Electronic warfare suites turned enemy ships against each other, rewriting friend or foe targeting systems. Drop pods rained from orbit, landing human special forces directly into the heart of enemy fortresses. It was not a battle. It was a massacre. A single message. By the end of the fourth hour, the Zalvani and Vorkari war efforts were in ruins. Their fleets were shattered. Their leadership was either dead or unable to issue orders. Their soldiers, realizing the hopelessness of their situation, began to lay down their arms. The human fleet, untouched, pushed forward relentlessly. At exactly the fifth hour, a message was transmitted across every war front. It was not a negotiation. It was not a request. It was a simple statement. The war is over. The Zalvani and Vorkari, once the greatest military powers in the galaxy, had lost in 5 hours. The sleeping giant had awakened. And now, the galaxy belonged to humanity. 5 hours of hell. The war had lasted 112 years. Humanity ended it in 5 hours. The Zalvani and Vorkari had fought for generations, believing themselves the greatest military forces in the galaxy. They had clashed in massive battles that lasted for months, grinding each other down in a seemingly endless cycle of destruction. But when humans entered the war, they introduced something neither empire had ever encountered before: total, calculated annihilation. There were no prolonged sieges, no slow, back-and-forth skirmishes, no grand speeches or battle cries. There was only systematic execution. Hour 1, silence falls. It began with darkness. The Zalvani and Vorkari relied on vast, intricate networks of communication to coordinate their war. Entire fleets depended on encrypted channels, planetary defenses operated through centralized AI, and supply chains stretched across hundreds of systems. Humanity shut them all down in seconds. Every encrypted network collapsed. Centuries of technological defenses, firewalls, and countermeasures fell to human cyber warfare like glass under a hammer. Battlefield commands ceased. Thousands of ships, caught mid-maneuver, found themselves suddenly blind. Planetary defenses powered down. Turrets fell silent. Shield generators failed. Entire armies were left leaderless, confused, and exposed. The Zalvani Grand Admiral tried to re-establish control, barking orders to his crew. His voice was the only sound on the bridge. His command console was dead. His officers' screens were blank. His fleet, the mightiest in Zalvani history, drifted powerless in the void. And then the first bombardments began. Hour 2, the sky burns. Humanity did not fight like other species. The Zalvani and Vorkari were used to massive, drawn-out fleet battles, where warships exchanged fire for days. But the humans? They did not waste time. They removed obstacles permanently. Orbital railgun platforms fired kinetic rods the size of skyscrapers, each one slamming into enemy fleets at near-light speed. Ships did not explode. They simply ceased to exist, punched through as if they were made of paper. Stealth bombers bypassed planetary defenses, dropping tungsten warheads that turned entire military installations into molten craters. AI-piloted drones swarmed through enemy formations, moving faster than any organic pilot could react, disabling ships in seconds. The Zalvani homeworld's primary fleet yards, where they had built their warships for centuries, vanished in a single bombardment. The Vorkari's largest military fortress, a planetary stronghold that had never fallen in 100 years of war, was wiped off the surface of its world in under 3 minutes. For the first time in the war, the Zalvani and Vorkari commanders panicked. And that was before the humans landed. Hour 3, the monsters in the dark. The Zalvanti and Vorkari had always assumed human soldiers were like any other species, slow, predictable, bound by the same limitations. They were wrong. Drop pods rained from orbit like meteors, carrying human super soldiers encased in adaptive exosuits, armor that moved faster, hit harder, and turned them into unstoppable war machines. Infiltration teams struck deep within enemy command centers, moving with surgical precision, eliminating high-ranking officers before they even realized they were under attack. Cities and fortresses fell without resistance. The enemy had already seen what human weapons could do. Their soldiers, terrified and leaderless, surrendered in droves. A Vorkari general, surrounded in his command bunker, sent a desperate transmission. Reinforcements. We need. The last thing he saw was a flash of light. Hour 4. The death of empires. By now, both the Zalvani and Vorkari knew they had lost. Entire fleets had been reduced to drifting wreckage. Planets once considered impenetrable strongholds now lay in ruins. Their armies, demoralized and cut off from command, were being systematically dismantled. Desperate to avoid extinction, the Zalvani Supreme Chancellor sent a direct message to Earth's fleet. We surrender. We offer peace. Please let us negotiate. The response was immediate. Unacceptable. The bombardments continued. Hour 5. The final transmission. At the 5-hour mark, the war officially ended. Not because of a treaty, not because of negotiations, but because there was nothing left to fight with. The Zalvani Dominion and Vorkari Empire, once the two greatest military forces in the galaxy, had been erased in a single afternoon. Their fleets had been shattered. Their leaders were dead or captured. Their soldiers had surrendered, those that remained. Then, and only then, did the human fleet halt its advance. Across every battlefield, every occupied system, a single message was transmitted on all channels. The war is over. The galaxy had never seen such a swift and total defeat. For 112 years, the war had consumed entire civilizations. It had taken billions of lives. And in just 5 hours, humanity had erased it from existence. There was no celebration, no cheers, no speeches, just the cold, quiet reality that the war had ended, not through diplomacy, not through peace, but through the absolute and undeniable force of human power. And for the first time, the galaxy truly feared humanity. A new era. The war was over. What had consumed the galaxy for 112 years had been erased in 5 hours. The Zalvani Dominion and the Vorkari Empire, once the greatest military powers in known space, no longer existed as functioning entities. Their fleets were shattered, their armies broken, and their leaders either dead or in human custody. The galaxy was silent. Not the silence of peace, but the silence of shock. The aftermath of annihilation. The Galactic Council convened in an emergency session just hours after the war ended. Representatives from countless species gathered in a massive station orbiting a neutral world, their voices hushed, their movements uneasy. Normally, the council was a place of arguments, deals, and endless bureaucracy. Not today. Every species, no matter their allegiance, had seen what humanity was capable of. War to them had always been a slow, grinding process. But humans had proven that they could erase empires in hours. Now, the galaxy had only one question. What happens next? Humanity's terms. When a human delegation arrived, there was no ceremony, no fanfare. No need for it. 3 figures represented Earth. 1 diplomat, 1 military commander, and 1 AI liaison. They took their seats in silence as the council leaders stared at them with thinly veiled fear. The Zalvani and Vorkari homeworlds still burned. The remains of their fleets drifted as silent tombs in the void. The survivors of their shattered empires had no hope of retaliation, only the desperate plea that humanity would not do the same to the rest of the galaxy. The council speaker finally addressed them. Humanity, he said carefully, you have proven your strength. You have done what no species has ever accomplished. But now, the galaxy must rebuild. We ask you, what are your demands? The room braced for conquest, for domination, for an ultimatum that would place humanity at the center of the galaxy's power. Instead, the human diplomat simply said, no more war. Murmurs spread through the chamber. No one had expected that answer. The human continued, their voice calm but unyielding. We are not here to rule. We do not seek to expand our territory or install human governors. But hear this, war as you have known it is over. The council speaker hesitated. And if another war begins? The human military commander leaned forward. His eyes were cold. Then we will end it. Again, silence. The meaning was clear. Humanity would not tolerate another galactic war. There would be no second chances. If the council allowed such destruction to happen again, Earth would erase the offenders from existence. just as they had done to the Zalvani and Vorkari. The room felt heavy with the weight of that promise. The fear of humanity. Word spread quickly. Across the galaxy, species that had once thrived on war, mercenaries, warlords, even small-scale planetary conflicts, began to crumble under fear. Pirate fleets that had terrorized trade routes for centuries vanished overnight, their ships found adrift, their crews missing. Military leaders who had built their careers on war resigned in disgrace, knowing that further violence would only lead to humanity's wrath. Civilizations that had once relied on their fleets and armies for power now scrambled to find new ways to exist in a world where war had become a death sentence. For the first time in history, peace was not an ideal, it was enforced. A simple warning. Months later, a final message from Earth was broadcast across every known system. It was not a threat, not a demand, but a statement of fact. It read, "This galaxy has bled enough. You will find another way, or you will not exist at all. Choose wisely." The message was signed with a single insignia, the mark of humanity. No species challenged it, not because of diplomacy, not because of treaties, but because they had seen firsthand what happened when humanity stopped holding back. And no one, not a single empire, species, or ruler, wanted to know what would happen if they did so again. The war had ended, and so had the galaxy's age of chaos. A new era had begun.